Okay, so this is kind of our first assignment that we're going to be working on with painting. It's kind of an explorative sort of a deal where we're going to make a series of just 8 boxes and different ways to apply the paint to the surface area. But first we need to kind of designate some areas that we're going to be working with on that one. So what I like you to do, take a ruler, doesn't matter which type, but I need to make some squares in here. So this is a pencil. Just a light pencil. I'm just going to put a line here, and then I think these are going to be about 2-inch squares, and so I'm just going to make a series of lines across like that. This one, it doesn't necessarily have to be 1 inch in from the side. That's just kind of what I was initially making here. And then if we have this one to be 2 inches, we'll probably be okay. Oh, a little crazy there, hold on. And then coming back down like that. And then let's just make some 2-inch squares here between those lines. So I have one here, one here. Let's build this way. That's probably be easier, huh? Because I am right-handed. Let's go here. That's 1, 2. Let's go in maybe 1 inch. Make a line. Make a line. Go over 1 inch. 2 inches. This one's going to be a little narrower. I'm only going to do 1/2 inch on this one. So I wanted to make sure I had room on the end there. So 1/2 inch in between will work. The main thing is just to have some designated space where you can be putting in the paint. Okay, so I have 8 squares. Let's see if we can actually see those here. There we go. A little bit of an angle on so you can see it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Within those squares, we're going to apply paint with different sorts of things. They're kind of technique things. They're just kind of ways of applying the paint. Is what we have here. The first one I wanted to do, things you'll notice I've got my brush, got my paints, is I'm just going to kind of pre-wet some stuff. I'm going to use a blue. You can use any color you like, as long as it's a darker color for these first applications of what we're working for. This is how most of us attack watercolor paints when we first get it. We put in some water, we glob it around a little bit, and then we start putting in our paint like that. We said, no, we want that a little bit darker. We kind of come in, we do that sort of a thing. Here's a trick. Here's a trick. There's one right from the beginning. Use the tip of the brush to define where the boundaries are between areas. And so if I wanted to, if this pencil line is a boundary, I can use the tip of the brush to define where that is. Okay, and then I'm going to rotate my paper. I'm going to use the tip of the brush here to show where the boundary is. Also, don't be I don't know, sometimes people think that the areas of the paper, once you set it on your table, you can't move it. That's not true. Rotate these guys around so that you can manipulate the paint where it needs to go. Because the tip of the brush is, I can see it. I can see the side down here with that tip of the brush as we work with that area. Okay, a little bit more here. Let's get in that corner just a little bit. And so that's kind of a neat application. By neat, I mean controlled. It's in a specific place. We have this big puddle right here. And I'm just kind of globbing that in there. And we finish it all up. And so this first application is usually how we do it. We want a little bit more paint. And we kind of slug it in like that. And we put our paint in our areas. Yeah, which is kind of cool. Putting there. Notice there's some areas there where it's starting to dry a little bit, and we have some light areas, some dark areas, that sort of a thing. Yeah, it's pretty cool. But it is applied in that particular area and workable sort of solution. The next one I wanted to do is kind of a call it a dry brush technique. I got some paper towels over here that I'm going to be using just to kind of blob this off a little bit. So what I want to do is this. I'm going to take my brush and then I'm going to dry it out and with the paper towel. and I'm going to squeeze it a little bit so I can see the so that the bristles kind of flare out just a little bit in this area. So now I'm going to take, I'm not going to put any water in it, I'm just going to kind of brush the surface of this paint like this, and what's going to happen is here is you'll notice that we can put in some streaks. Now your paint needs to be wet a little bit first. This is called dry brush. You'll notice it has, and I'm putting it in so it's kind of over an area, right, on that. Oops, I had a little bit more on that one. That's kind of cool too. But you'll notice it kind of is kind of crackly, for lack of a better term, on that one. Normally what I do, here's the thing that I do on that one. I'll have like a scrap piece of paper or something like that, and I'll take my first stroke here. I'm going to put a little more water here. I'm starting to lose some of my water on my stuff. And so I'll take my first stroke here to see if it's what I want it to look like, and then I can go and start adding it to the area. We go over here, we load it up that. You do a little bit of a strokes thing. I'm thinking it's okay. And you can also do little things like this that are little more texturally sort of stuff. Still dry brush on that. And I guess you kind of see it where the paint starts to run out at the end with the dry brush techniques on what we're working with. And so that's kind of a deal. And I just want you to make some marks within this area. Now if you have a flat brush that you're utilizing on this one, it has a little bit of a wider stroke. This one I can only go as wide as the brush is. So, but that's a dry brush technique where you're adding, where there's just a very little paint on the actual brush, and it gets this broken sort of an application. And so that's another way you can apply paint. So we just glob it in is one thing. Dry brush is another thing that we're working on with those. Another one I wanted to do is called a flat wash. On those. So let's take this one. This time I got my brush just with water. Okay, I've just got water in here, and I'm putting the water into the square, the area, the designated area that I want to be using, and I can go right up to the edge. I'm not actually at the edge on that one, but I put the water in first. Now a lot of times, anytime you put in some sort of a liquid medium like this one, they'll call this wet into wet. And it's a great technique for putting in a flat wash. Flat wash is an area of even value on those. And so I'm going to cruise here like that. I got to watch, I can't stick my arm in my paint that I already have there. I'm using the tip of the brush once again just to define where the puddle is. And usually when you have a puddle established on that, the paint stays within the puddle. It doesn't just go running crazy all over the place. Okay, so I have this area of water that I have. Now we're going to take some of our paint, and we're going to drop it in there. Notice when it hits, it starts to spread. That's because the water is the vehicle we're using to get this stuff to go all over the place. And so we can just take it in here, and it's going to spread out over the whole area. And that's going to make more of an even application of the paint. Okay, and so now I'm going to take in here, in order to make that a flat wash, I'm going to kind of mix this around a little bit so that I'm kind of mixing within that puddle. You put your Kool-Aid into the container. You drop your Kool-Aid into the container there, and it hits initially and it stays in one spot. But it starts to diffuse out over the whole pitcher of Kool-Aid. And if you want it to, not be stuck in one spot, you got to mix it up a little bit. And so we're mixing this puddle up a little bit. And so as I see this, I want to see my reflection. I want to see that it's shiny in there on that. Now here's another thing you can do to make that a flat wash. I'm just going to take it like this. I'm going to let everything start to gather on this one edge right here. And then I'm going to roll it across this way. I'm going to change direction. So I'm using gravity to pull and distribute the paint evenly across the area. And that's mixing the pigment pieces with it as well, making it into a flat wash, an area of even value. And so now I'm just kind of mix that down. So if I let it look like that, we kind of compare. This one looks fairly even. This one looks kind of splotchy. There's areas where it's lighter and darker and that sort of a thing. And now neither one of those is right or wrong. It's just depending on what you're trying to do with those. This one could be the right solution, and this one could be the right solution. That one could be the right solution on what we're looking for. It just kind of depends on what you're trying to do with your stuff on that one. The next thing I wanted to do is let's put some additives into the paint on those. And so I'm just going to get some stuff here. I'm going to put in a little water first. I always like a little bit of water on that one. I'm going to get my paint, and I'm going to put it in here, and just so I define where it is. Now I'm going pretty quick on that one. Please take your time to do a good job on this one, not a sloppy job on that. By that I mean make sure that you are painting up to the lines but not over the lines on those. You'd probably look, hey Mr. White, that's looking kind of like a flat wash. Kind of on those. I just got to make sure I got my pigment in here. And use the tip of the brush again as we come across here. Alright. Now this one is going to require that I do have a little bit of liquid in there because what's going to happen is this is going to, we want to put some things in here. Okay, so I have that area here, and how does water react with other substances? That's kind of the thing that we're looking at on this one when it starts to dry. And so I have here salt on those, just a little bit of table salt. I'm going to put a little bit in my hand here on that, and then I'm just going to take and I'm going to put a little bit of salt flakes, granules, in this area so we can see what's going to happen when it dries. Now you can use sand, will also work, has a slightly different texture. You can already see that the salt is kind of pulling some of the pigment towards itself and causing it to have some interesting drying effects. And so I'm just going to toss the rest of that. Okay, and so I'm going to let that guy dry. And so we're going to see what happens with the salt. And here's what's going to happen. The salt's going to pull some of the pigment right towards the actual granules, and then when it dries it's going to leave a little bit more of a heavier deposit there. Now that can create an interesting texture on the surface on what you're trying to do, which is kind of a cool deal on those. So that's an additive that we put in there. Let's do another additive. Let's jump down here on that. Let's get a little bit of water in. And let's go back and get our paint, and we put it in there. And then this is just more water. So between the water and the paint, trying to put that in there. And remember to make sure you're trying to keep things neat and square. And let's get over here. I gotta watch my arm again to make sure I don't put my hand or arm right in the other paint on that one. Okay, so there's a little bit of our area. Let's put a little bit more pigment in here. And so this is once more an additive sort of thing. And you can think of trying, maybe you try different sorts of things that you can add in here. Traditionally, like I said, salt, sand, that's kind of a traditional sort of thing people do with experimenting on putting things in. That's kind of cool. I have here alcohol, just rubbing alcohol on that one. I don't think it matters whether it's 70% or whatever percent it is there on that. This just has a dropper in it. You could use a brush, you could use a toothpick, a popsicle stick, or something like that. I just want to put a drop or so. I'm going to put a drop of something there, maybe a drop of something there, and let's put one down here where it's a little bit more wet. Drop, drop. Oh, cool. And so you put, that's an additive that you can put in there too that has sort of an effect on how things are. So if you put something that is that has a like some sort of a solvent type of a base things into water, right? It's going to push it here. It's going to have some effect. It's going to put some things, going to push the pigment away from it, which is kind of a cool deal. Let's do this since we're talking about pushing and pulling on that one. You can also block off certain areas in your application on those. And so I'm just going to take, here's a piece of tape. I want to see how that is. That's a pretty thick one, but we'll do it anyway. Let's do this. I don't want it going all the way in there. I'm just going to have it maybe go like that. I'm going to press that down a little bit there, and then I'm going to have maybe little bits of pieces here as we press them down. So this is masking some areas off. Okay, so now let's go ahead and go here, and we put in our paint, and you can still make, if you're looking to make this into a flat wash, as long as I keep this area wet and add water, you know, while I'm adding the pigment, it'll probably work out okay for me. And so a lot of times people, they're trying to figure out, you know, how to make white and keep white in a specific spot. Well, the deal with paint, watercolor paints, is the white is actually the color of the paper that we're dealing with on that. So as we start to add those things in, oh, I got my head in the way again. I get kind of involved there with those. So as we add those in, you'll notice that if you put some sort of a block on it, the paint's not going to go in that space. So suppose you're in a circumstance where you want to make some leaves or something like that. You put down a base coat of light yellow, and then you tear out these little leaf shapes and you put them all over there. Then you put down a coat of light green, and then you come down and you put down more things over top that, and you put down a coat of dark green. And then you come back and you peel all those pieces off, and so you have little speckles of where it was yellow. And then you may have other areas where it's that medium green, and then you may have other areas where it's that dark green, and that's used like for masking things off. Other possibilities on what we can do with this is doing masking fluid is one. I think I had an example of that. They actually make this little rubberized stuff here. It dries out pretty quick, so I don't use it that much. I just kind of like to leave the stuff, but it's a masking fluid, so it's liquid rubber. And you can paint it where you want the white to be, or the green, or the purple, or whatever color you want that you're going to paint over. And then you take it and you just rub it off like this, and then it removes it. Another possibility is a crayon, either a wax crayon or like you see with Easter eggs or something like that. And you utilize that as a way to mask something off. Or a white crayon will work as well, depending on what you're trying to do on those sorts of things. So that's kind of a cool deal. Let's go ahead and hit another square here. I just have a couple more left. This one, I'm going to use more of a traditional wet into wet technique. And what I mean by that is we're going to get the water in there first, then we're going to have a certain color, and then we'll put a different color in. Different color. Okay, so let's get some of this in. Let's put in my blue. Ooh, I almost went outside the lines because I was getting rushed. I was getting a little bit in a hurry. Don't want to be into a hurry a little bit. So I'm putting in just our little bits of water. Let's mix it around a little bit here so it's in that area. And now here's where you see a lot of traditional, when people say wet into wet, this is what you're going to see. This was wet into wet, right, on that. Let's take another color. I like green. And my paper's starting to curl just a little bit. But this is what you see. I'm taking it and I'm just going to touch it right into here like that. And then let's go ahead and just touch it right along this edge. In fact, I'm going to paint it right along this edge there like that. I don't want it spread too far, so I'm holding that down. I'm trying to keep it localized. But here's what happened. When we put it in there, it's created a blend edge, and then some of the water's just kind of swirling back here. And so when you see wet into wet types of things, that a lot of times what they're talking about, where you have one wet paint, and then you're throwing another one in here, and you see what it does. Let's do another one here real quick on that one. This one is going to be for you to experiment. Let's put a couple different colors in here. Looks like I'm starting out with green at least a little bit. Now I also wanted to talk about, this will probably come at a later time, layering paints over top of each other once they're dry. Now that's another deal. A layer of transparent paint a lot of times is called a glazed layer. And so let's do that one. Let's use this one as a glazed layer, and we'll come back to it at this time. Maybe we can see, yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. I'm just going to leave that, okay? Gotta leave it, gotta let it dry. That's part of the deal. And so we're going to come back and paint over top of it in just a minute or so. I'm going to come back here and drop some yellow in here so I have some more wet into wet techniques just along the edge there, where this is dissolving this way and then this is kind of coming in this way, and that sort of thing. So there's my light coat of my green that I wanted to use, and so I'm going to let this dry, and then I'm going to come back in and show you what happens as far as layering paints on top of it, because that's the other way we can do it. All this stuff here, this was just single application stuff, and then putting more paints in. And what happens, the effects that you can have when you put an initial layer down, you let it dry, and then you come back with another layer on top. And so I'll do a little bit of a follow-up on those techniques, but this is the first basic assignment that we have on those that I would like you to try using those different sorts of techniques, different sorts of things. And then I'll do a follow-up where this is actually dry, this has dried where we can kind of see it, and then I'm put another layer over that one. Thanks so much for trying this stuff out, and hopefully you have some fun with it. I know I did, so cool. Talk to you soon.